Nobody locked their doors. The mothers cooked for all 5 families. If one house made kimchi jjigae, everyone ate kimchi jjigae. The fathers drank on the front steps. The children ran between houses like the walls didn't exist. Nobody called this community. Nobody designed it. It simply was. And watching it, from wherever you are in the world, from whatever year you are watching it in, you feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Not nostalgia for 1988 Seoul. You weren't there. Nostalgia for something else. Something you might never have had. Something the modern world quietly removed before you noticed it was gone. This is K-Logic. And today, we decode the Reply 1988 algorithm. Imagine pitching Reply 1988 to a Western network. No villain, no major conflict, no romantic triumph, no career success story. A group of families living in a small Seoul alley in 1988, doing ordinary things, eating together, arguing about small things, growing up slowly, loving each other imperfectly. The network would pass. Western television is structured around conflict resolution, the problem that gets solved, the relationship that gets repaired, the goal that gets achieved. The dramatic arc requires a clear before and after. Something must change. Something must be won or lost. Reply 1988 understood something different. It understood that the most devastating thing you can show an audience is not tragedy. It is ordinary goodness, the specific quality of human life that exists when people are genuinely, unself-consciously embedded in each other's existence. The show ran for 20 episodes and averaged a 12% cable rating in Korea, extraordinary for a cable drama. More significantly, it became one of the most rewatched Korean dramas internationally years after its 2015 broadcast, consistently appearing in Best Korean Drama lists compiled by viewers in countries that had no connection to 1988 Seoul. The international viewer who cries at Reply 1988 is not crying for Korea. They are crying for the Ssangmundong Alley, the fictional neighborhood that the show built from the specific social architecture of Korean community life, because that architecture named something they had lost, or never had, or didn't know they were missing until the show showed it to them. That architecture has a name. K-Logic calls it the Jeong Network, the dense web of mutual obligation, shared experience, and unconditional presence that the Korean concept of Jeong produces when it operates at the level of a physical community. And Reply 1988 is its most precise documentary. Reply 1988 encodes 3 Korean social algorithms into its neighborhood structure. Each one explains a different dimension of why the show produces the emotional response it does, in Korea and everywhere else. Algorithm 1. The Jeong Network as physical architecture. In most analyses of Reply 1988, the neighborhood is treated as a backdrop, the charming setting that gives the show its period atmosphere. K-Logic reads it as the protagonist. The Ssangmundong Alley is not where the Jeong happens. It is what makes the Jeong possible. The specific physical architecture of the alley, the proximity of the houses, the shared walls, the narrow lanes that make private life semi-public, creates the conditions for Jeong accumulation that the modern apartment tower structurally prevents. Remember the scene where Deok-sun's mother sends food next door because she made too much? In a modern apartment building, that moment is impossible. You don't know your neighbor made food. You don't share a courtyard that lets the smell travel. You don't have the accumulated years of semi-public proximity that makes offering food to a neighbor feel natural rather than intrusive. The alley is the hardware. The Jeong is the software. And the software only runs on this specific hardware. This is why the show's emotional impact crosses every cultural boundary. Because every viewer from a modern urban environment recognizes, at some level, that they are living on hardware that cannot run this software. And the show shows them what they are missing. Algorithm 2. The collective memory of Han. Every character in Reply 1988 carries Han, Sung Dong-ail's father, the one who cannot afford his children's dreams but shows up anyway, who absorbs failure with a dignity that makes every scene with him almost unwatchable in its tenderness. Deok-sun's middle child invisibility, the Han of being the one nobody notices, the one who has to want less because there is simply less available. Takes father, raising a genius son alone, the specific Han of a parent who cannot give their child what they deserve. The show does not resolve this Han. It witnesses it. And in witnessing it, in refusing to fix what cannot be fixed, in honoring the dignity of people who are carrying what cannot be put down, Reply 1988 does exactly what we decoded in the Han algorithm. It provides the cultural permission to feel the weight of what actually happened, without being required to feel better about it before you're ready. The international viewer who cries at Ssangmundong Il's father scenes is not crying for a Korean character in 1988. They are crying because the show named something about their own parent, their own Han, that they had never seen named so precisely before. Algorithm 3, the Underdog Algorithm in domestic form. In our Underdog Algorithm analysis, we decoded the Korean cultural preference for stories where the protagonist doesn't win, where dignity in the face of an unjust system is honored more than triumph over it. Reply 1988 runs this algorithm in its most intimate register. Nobody in Ssangmundong wins in the conventional sense. The families are not wealthy. The dreams are modest. The outcomes are ordinary. And yet the show treats each of these ordinary lives with a reverence that the conventional success narrative never extends to people who don't achieve extraordinary things. The dignity of the ordinary. The show is saying, these lives mattered. This neighborhood mattered. The fact that none of it produced a chaebol heir or a famous artist or a dramatic transformation does not diminish what it was. This is the Underdog Algorithm applied not to a historical martyr or a failed athlete, but to the specific, quotidian heroism of parents who showed up, neighbors who shared food, children who loved each other imperfectly in a small alley in 1988. And the world recognized it immediately. Because the world is full of people whose ordinary lives have never been treated as worthy of this kind of attention. Reply 1988 gave it to them. If this analysis is showing you the algorithms running underneath the Korean dramas you love, subscribe to K-Logic. The code is in every frame. We just need to know how to read it. Reply 1988 was broadcast in 2015. This is not a coincidence. 2015 was the midpoint of a decade that saw global smartphone penetration cross 50%, social media become the primary infrastructure of human social connection, and urban loneliness indices begin their steep climb across every developed economy. The year the Ssangmundong Alley went global was the year the world began to formally acknowledge that the upgrade from alley to apartment, from physical community to digital network, from Jeong to likes, had cost something that the metrics of progress had never measured. The show hit differently in different markets for the same reason. In Korea, the recognition of something recently lost. The alley neighborhoods that the show documents were demolished across Korea's rapid urbanization of the 1970s through 1990s. Many Korean viewers of a certain age watched the show and recognized their own childhood, the specific social architecture that the apartment towers replaced. In international markets, the recognition of something never had, or had differently, or lost earlier. The Brazilian viewer who recognized the neighborhood structure from their own favela community. The American viewer who recognized the front porch culture of a grandmother's small town. The Japanese viewer who recognized the Shitamachi neighborhood culture that Tokyo's development replaced. Different hardware, same software. The specific Korean encoding of Jeong, Han, and the Underdog Algorithm produced a show that transmitted its emotional content across every cultural boundary. Not because it was universally relatable in its specifics, but because the systems it documented are universal in their absence. The world isn't crying for 1988 Seoul. The world is crying for the social architecture that made 1988 Seoul possible, and recognizing, in the crying, that it doesn't know how to get it back. Reply 1988 is not a nostalgia show. It is a diagnostic. It shows, with the precision of a field test, exactly what the social architecture of human community requires to produce the specific quality of connection that every viewer recognizes and almost nobody has anymore. Physical proximity, sustained over time, with no exit option. The alley didn't produce Jeong because the people in it were exceptionally good or exceptionally warm. It produced Jeong because it removed the exit option. You couldn't choose not to know your neighbor. You couldn't choose not to hear their arguments, smell their cooking, see their children grow up. The proximity was not voluntary. And in that involuntary proximity, over time, something accumulated. That voluntary connection, the kind you can opt into and opt out of at any time, almost never produces. The modern world has optimized for the exit option. We can choose our communities, our connections, our social environments with a precision that no previous generation could imagine. And in that optimization, we have produced something that Reply 1988 identifies with devastating clarity. The freedom to leave is also the freedom to never fully arrive. The Ssangmundong alley didn't give its residents a choice. And in not giving them a choice, it gave them something that the modern world's infinite social optionality cannot produce at any price. For the viewer who watches Reply 1988 and feels something they cannot name, the K-logic read is simple. You are feeling the Jeong that the alley produced, transmitted across decades and borders through 20 episodes of television, arriving in your living room, your commute, your 3 a.m. viewing session, as evidence that this specific quality of human connection existed, and as an invitation to ask what your own architecture, your own neighborhood, your own building, your own daily social environment is producing. If Reply 1988 decoded something you've been feeling but couldn't name, hit like and subscribe to K-Logic, because the most important algorithms are the ones running in the shows you can't stop rewatching. And we're just getting started. K-Logic will continue decoding the invisible systems that make Korean culture one of the most globally resonant forces on the planet. Because the source code was always there. You just needed to know what neighborhood it grew up in.